Well, thank you for that introduction, Mustafa. And we're here today to talk about something that I think often gets overlooked when we talk about some of the economic costs associated with climate change, and that are the sort of non-economic, the broader costs to culture and to art and to some Indigenous knowledge. And I was talking to someone yesterday about how in India they are trying to move forward in perhaps getting a repository of some of that knowledge that would be lost. And one of the things that I know that Gokul is very interested in is some of the Ayurvedic plants and medicinal knowledge that obviously due to climate change might be at risk of either losing the plants or losing the knowledge that's associated with that. So I'd like to pass it over to you, Gokul, to perhaps give us a sense of what you're actually trying to achieve and what you're doing with your app.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to me. And thank you so much, Climate Medicine and Climate Health Foundation, for getting me here. And yeah, so I'm working on Indigenous medicine back in India. And yeah, trying to bring up the importance of why Indigenous medicine is so important for climate action, because with that, we can bring a value for climate, why we should protect the nature, because our biodiversity is our very most important thing. And normal people as normal civilians doesn't care if we are saying that biodiversity protected, but when we show it there's a value for the biodiversity, it's a medicinal thing, they will tend to more protect it. So that's the main reason I'm here, for promoting Indigenous medicine, so that people as a civilians who hearing this can put their value, put their hearts to it, to protecting nature.
Well, thank you. And I think when we're talking about loss and damage, I think sometimes these sort of elements get lost in the mix. And so I think it's really important to think through how we can best achieve and maintain that biodiversity. So what are some of the key things that you think that we can all learn in terms of how we can protect that?
By trying to share the information about how your grandparents or the parents trying to use herbs from your own local communities to protect for different uses in your household, that can be shared. That's the best way to showcase within your house that how biodiversity is protecting us, and the value is that too much so that's the main thing which I got my idea for protection of biodiversity, to make an app for biodiversity, like a social media, so that everyone can contribute. So the app Govardhan, it's like a world's first ever social media for biodiversity. We are giving a username to every single plant and animal out there, so that we can bridge the gap between the scientific, like the botanical name Mangifera indica, but normal people doesn't know. Only the experts look into it, and the local name. So it's like in my country, in my place, we'll call it mango. So the difference between these is learning more about. If you're an expert, you will know about the Mangifera indica, but if you're a local person, you only know the local name. So we want to bridge the gap between that by making a use a social media for biodiversity, so that we can preserve our Indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge, and culture.
I did hear a talk, it was either yesterday or the day before, it is a bit of a blur, about using digital applications, social media, to actually try and move forward this conversation and make the voice perhaps of those who haven't been heard, who have this Indigenous knowledge, to amplify that and perhaps even save it for future generations, because I think some of the concern was that we're losing those voices and that some of the future generations won't have access to that. So how do you think that something like an app or social media can help promote that throughout perhaps the next generation and keeping that knowledge alive?
So it's we are creating something like a pool of community. In your community, you will be having a plant, and you create a profile for the plant, and you'll share that within your community, not somewhere internationally or something, so that people from your community can know that plant as the username you give, not some expert somewhere sitting in another world saying that this is that plant. So that everyone will know that plant with the name you gave. So it's your community name, and everyone can tag that plant and share information how they use it in their household, and we can have a repository of that data with us for further use. And also everyone can learn from that as well, because everyone has a little bit knowledge about every plant, but it's not taken into a single space. Yeah.
Are you concerned about access, though, to technology to allow that digital health, that profile to be spread within the community? Do you think that most in these communities have access to that?
Most of the European region has access to smartphones, but I'm scared. Like in African regions, this COP, like some of my friends from African region told me that, like in African regions, most of people doesn't have access to smartphone, but they have access to like a phone with basic amenities like SMS and everything. So we need to try to incorporate that as well. So, yeah, I'm trying to do that.
People have also been talking about the actual loss of the plants themselves. So obviously climate change has an impact not only on the knowledge that might be passed down, but also the availability of some of these plants, that some of these will no longer be able to actually grow and flourish in that community.
Something there was something like I was here from COP28, and there was a youth delegate from Denmark, I think. I was saying about like introducing myself, and I'm using indigenous medicine. She told me like only 5% of that country's forest is like biodiversity, but everything else has been standardized. So only 5% is left in that country. So it was like literally scary that too much standardization has taken away our biodiversity.
And I was talking to someone the other day about actually having a repository of some of the seeds and the knowledge, so that it's actually physical as well as digital. That I think there are some moves within India to try and consider whether to be able to store even artifacts like clothing, things that might get destroyed in floods or in other extreme weather events, that also is part of the knowledge that will be passed on. And that's a sort of a segue into one of the art projects that we decided to try and showcase here. And that was looking very much at the generational view of climate and health. And so what we used, we were more sort of like future thinking, that we used some of the artificial intelligence image generators using prompts from different generations to really see how they perceive climate and health. And so we have over on here, we couldn't really go further back than the silent generation because we didn't know anybody who was actually 100. But we have the silent generation, then baby boomers, Gen X, we have millennials, Gen Z, and Generation Alpha, which also I think ties in nicely to the talk we heard earlier today about the children whose voices in this debate are often overlooked. And so right at the back, there's actually some pictures that some children have also drawn. So we were hoping to achieve in this particular project just to see, and we do have, if you want to have a look, people have also written some of their thoughts and feelings about it. But again, to make it more of a narrative, more of a cultural touchstone for people, and that they could tell their stories. And so I think that ties in quite well in terms of what you're trying to protect too. So do you feel that, do you have enough access now to some of the prior generations' knowledge that you can then incorporate in what you're doing?
That's a big, nice question. So yeah, I'm trying to get like data from the prior generations, but we need youth participation for that. Like youth learning to how to use the app, and also asking from, because yeah, like prior generation doesn't actually, I'm good with social media stuff, right? So the youth is something I'm looking forward to helping me out with collecting that data. And yeah, we are trying to do our best.
Yes. And we did have a challenge with some generations when we were even talking about using AI to generate images. So that was kind of a fascinating experience. And even I, who I'm not very AI savvy, I'm more of a traditional artist. I like to actually, do it in physical form rather than digital form. Had a bit of a challenge with that. But one of the things that I think that we also want to touch on, and that was emphasized this morning, is that human need for art and stories and that human face of climate change. And one of the other things that we tried to do to make it more of a visual representation, to draw the climate and health perspective with the art, was that I had actually painted some lab coats for some of our doctors to wear that depict some of the more extreme weather events. So I did wildfire, I did hurricane, I did drought, and I did flood as a graphical representation. And I don't know, we might have a little fashion demonstration if somebody would like to come to the stage just for a little minute, just to show one of the ones. This is the wildfire one. And what I thought was really interesting while I was doing this is I do use art very much as a therapeutic, stress relief. But it is also a visual way of not only encapsulating the sort of the terrifying reality of climate change, but also working through therapeutically, perhaps how emotionally you feel about it by the time you've put that sort of, well, it was still paint to lab coat. You do feel better in the end because it does have that. And so I would like to see that hopefully when we think about some of the human impacts of climate change, that we also recognize that a lot of people need to turn to art, culture, storytelling to really resolve how they feel about this and perhaps to express their emotions. Definitely some of our children find it very hard because they may not have the words. So maybe the art itself can be the mechanism by which we can sort of draw attention to some of the human face and the intersection between climate and art. And so I think, do you feel that there's a role to play in a broader sense that perhaps that you would like to see moving forward, like beyond perhaps the social media or the digital aspect in terms of what you're trying to save? And you can
Yeah.
released.
Thank. So it's like other than the aspect, it's like people's mentality towards indigenous medicine. Like we have to have a belief. Like I used to have a belief before, and that kept us alive as a human population, and that's also slowly going like fading away as our indigenous medicine is also fading away. So yeah, it's like really like little bit connected to the mental health as well, which is deteriorating. So yeah, indigenous health like indigenous medicine and culture had like a lot of protective action on our mind as well, which helped us cope with stress and everything. Yeah.
Well, that was really all we kind of wanted to have our little conversation about, but we would love to get questions that you might have, especially for Gokul, about what he's trying to do in terms of the Ayurvedic medicinal plants and the repository and the app. So I'd like to open it up. So
It's not just Ayurvedic. It's like everything in the
it's
world,
even
and like
broader.
every country has their own indigenous medicine. When I went around the world, like today from someone from Mexico, it's like University of a organization, they just gave me a medicine from Mexico which is plant based. It's an antibacterial anti
Bacterial.
no
Oh, microbial.
yeah, something like that. Forgot that.
I'm just throwing words out there.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was like antibiotic. Sorry, yeah, antibiotic. So it was an antibiotic. So it was really something they were trying to develop and share with the world. So yeah, there is like every country has their own uh, indigenous traditional knowledge. So I'm here as part of Ukraine. So they are having a session on indigenous medicine as well this time. Even we had a session on Egypt, and Nigeria, Uganda pavilions have also set up sessions for indigenous medicine this time. So
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, so does anybody have any comments, questions, anything they'd like to say?
Are there any efforts to actually like sort of grow some of these plants, restore? I was just wondering, so there's a repository on all of these plants, but are there also efforts to restore some of these ecosystems and start growing some of these plants back as a healing or keeping the movement alive?
So there is like I'm trying to like this was started like launched last year in front of the CERN. Like there is a Shiva statue over there which is like representing culture and science. CERN is the world's biggest laboratory on. You guys already know like world's biggest laboratory on science, and it has a Shiva statue there representing indigenous knowledge and culture, belief, and everything. So yeah, we launched in front of that statue, so to showcase that. And also I'm trying to develop this. It's just been 1 year only, so looking forward, and I'm working on this as just one person. So it's like so hard, like yeah, trying to develop as well, so going forward. So we have some from India and some other from other parts of the world as well. Yeah, like Mexico, Cuba, and everything. Yeah.
Can you keep the microphone closer to your
Great.
Any other comments or questions?
How many people here uses indigenous medicine? Yeah. Ah. 1, 2, 3. Oh. Like traditional knowledge as well. Like that's from your moms and everything. Yeah. WHO says 80%. It's called Govardhan. We have a session here in 3 p.m. as well on healing touch of plants. So I'll be bringing some plants as well. So if you guys would love to join.
That would be lovely. Well, I think that's probably, unless anybody has any more questions or comments. Yeah. And unless anybody has any more questions or comments. No? Well, great. Well, thank you so much for coming and giving us some great information. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making this session happen. Yeah. And great artwork.